The galaxy had not seen silence like this in 1,000 years. It began with a ripple of light above the alien capital world of Vezkar Prime, a sudden tear in the fabric of space that opened without sound, without warning. From that wound in the void, something began to emerge, slowly, heavily, like a creature waking after centuries of sleep. A black shape pushed through the rift. At first, the orbital sensors could not identify it. The scanners gave only static, then strange readings that made no sense. It was too big, too quiet, too perfect. The Dran Confederacy's fleet, hundreds of ships standing guard in orbit, turned their weapons toward it. But none of them fired. They only watched. The shape grew larger, the light of the nearest sun sliding across its armored surface. Admiral Vakar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, staring through the glass. His voice was low and uneasy. "Report, what is that?" "Unknown, Admiral," one of the officers replied. "Size enormous. Power reading, no match in our database. It's not one of ours, sir." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "Identify it now." The ship finished its silent emergence. Its hull was black metal marked with faint scars and symbols that looked ancient. There were no visible engines, yet it moved with a calm, steady drift. It seemed to breathe, its surface glowing faintly as though alive. Then for the first time, light from the nearby sun revealed a single word engraved deep into its armor. Humanity. The word spread through the fleet like a curse. Officers froze. Pilots stopped breathing. The communication channels filled with whispers. Humanity? That's impossible. They're extinct. They were wiped out during the Great Purge. But the ship was real. It was here. On the planet below, billions looked up. News stations switched their cameras skyward. Civilians saw a black shape blotting out part of the sun. Fear spread through every street, every home, every government hall. Children cried. Elders fell silent. Historians trembled because they knew the stories. The humans who had vanished, their worlds burned, their empire erased. The legends said humanity had been too dangerous, too unpredictable. When the galaxy united against them, it took every fleet, every world, every weapon to drive them into extinction. No one believed any human could have survived. Yet now the impossible hung above their skies. Inside the massive warship, the air was still. A low hum filled the corridors. The command deck glowed blue with data streams and holograms. At the center stood a man, Commander Arik Vale. His uniform was plain, his eyes steady. Before him floated the ship's AI core, a sphere of white light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Halion," Arik said quietly. "Status." The AI's voice was calm, emotionless. "All systems operational. Shield stable. Weapons offline. No immediate threats detected." Arik looked at the long-range display showing hundreds of alien ships forming a perimeter around them. "They're afraid," he said softly. "Fear detected across 89% of communication channels," Halion replied. "They are transmitting warnings, identification requests, and prayers," Arik exhaled slowly. "So they remember." He had grown up among the survivors, the scattered remnants of humanity who lived hidden in deep colonies beyond the galactic rim. He had heard the stories of what the galaxy did to Earth, how entire generations were hunted and erased. His ancestors had vowed that one day the stars would remember their name. That day had come. The alien fleet stayed in tight formation. On Admiral Vakar's ship, officers shouted over each other. "It's not responding to our hails, sir. Energy readings are off the charts." "What should we do?" Vakar's face turned pale. "Hold position," he ordered. "Do not engage. Send another signal. Demand identification." A moment later, a deep, cold voice filled every comm channel across the system. It spoke in perfect galactic common, but the tone carried something old, something that made every listener's heart tighten. "This is the Terran battleship Nemesis. Identify yourselves." Every ship in orbit fell silent. No one dared to speak. The name Terran was ancient. It was a word from humanity's past, Earth's name in the old tongue. The voice that spoke it was human, steady and calm, but filled with quiet authority. Admiral Vakar's second officer whispered, "Sir, should we respond?" Vakar nodded, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Open channel." He straightened his uniform and spoke loudly. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Vakar of the Dran Confederacy. You are entering restricted space. Identify your purpose." For several seconds there was no answer. Then the voice returned. "We came to remind the galaxy what you chose to forget." On the bridge of the Nemesis, Commander Arik gave a silent order. The ship's outer hull panels shifted slightly, revealing ancient Terran insignias, wings of steel and stars bound by flame. Across the galaxy, those symbols had once marked every battlefield where humans fought and bled. Helion reported softly. Enemy fleet scanning us. Attempting to lock weapons. Arik's voice stayed calm. Let them look. Outside, alien captains panicked. Their scanners showed the Nemesis as something impossible. A ship with no energy core, no life signs, no engine output, yet radiating power far beyond anything known. Some believed it was a ghost, a weapon of myth. On the planet below, civilians recorded the ship's image with trembling hands. Messages spread across the networks. The humans are back. The first religious leaders called it an omen. The soldiers called it a nightmare. The scientists called it an impossibility. But for Commander Arik Vale, it was simply destiny. He looked out into the black void through the viewing glass. After centuries, he whispered, they will finally remember. Helion's core pulsed softly. Commander, do we reveal our weapon systems? Arik shook his head. Not yet. Fear speaks louder than fire. The Nemesis drifted silently above the alien capital, its shadow covering the world like a storm cloud. Below, millions knelt in fear. Above, fleets hesitated between retreat and attack. In that stillness, the galaxy realized something terrifying. The humans had not just survived, they had evolved. And if this was only one ship, no one wanted to imagine what might follow behind it. As the first day ended, every transmission across the stars carried one message, repeated in panic and disbelief. Humanity has returned. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy understood what fear truly meant. The next morning across the galaxy, there were no trading signals, no music broadcast, no laughter on the airwaves, only silence and one repeating transmission from the dark ship in orbit. This is the Terran battleship Nemesis. Identify yourselves. No one had the courage to answer again. Inside the Dran Confederacy's command hall, the leaders of several alien species gathered in panic. The giant screen showed the massive ship still hanging in the sky above Vezkar Prime, unmoving, silent, but alive with faint blue light running through its armor. Admiral Vekar stood in the center of the room, voice sharp but trembling underneath. This is not possible. Humanity was erased. Their fleets were destroyed. There were no survivors. One of the counselors, a reptilian being with silver eyes, hissed in fear. Then explain that thing in our sky, Admiral. It carries their language, their markings. It even speaks their tongue. Vekar stared at the hologram of the ship. I do not know, he said finally, but if it is human, then the galaxy is in danger. Back on the Nemesis, Commander Arik Vale stood before a vast projection, showing thousands of incoming transmissions. Each one carried fear in its tone. Governments were sending peace offers. Warlords offered surrender. Others threatened, begging the ship to leave their sectors alone. Helion, the ship's AI, processed each message calmly. 312 fleets have moved into defensive formations. 77 have retreated. 22 are requesting communication. Arik crossed his arms, his expression calm but cold. They remember what they did to us, Helion. They fear judgment. Correction, Helion replied. They fear extinction. Arik walked slowly to the viewing window. The alien fleet still circled the planet, weapons hot but no one dared to fire. The Nemesis's hull shimmered faintly in the starlight, showing scars from ancient battles, reminders of how long it had traveled through darkness to return. Every corridor inside the warship was quiet. The crew of humans, descendants of those who had hidden on far colonies beyond the galactic rim, moved with silent discipline. They had trained their entire lives for this mission, the re-emergence protocol. Arik touched a holographic star map. Hundreds of red dots blinked, the territories of the alien alliance that once united to destroy Earth. How many systems still remember the old war? Records suggest only 37%, Commander, Helion answered. The rest believe humanity was myth, a story to frighten children. Arik's lips curved slightly. Then it is time for them to learn the truth. He turned toward the communication deck. Open a broadcast. Every system, every frequency, Helion obeyed. Across the galaxy, screens flickered. In every home, every military base, every ship, the image of a human appeared. Calm, uniformed, standing against the blue glow of the Nemesis's bridge. Arik's voice carried across the stars. For 1,000 years you called us extinct. You hunted our people, destroyed our worlds, and erased our name. You forgot who we were, but we never forgot you. Humanity endures. Humanity remembers. The transmission cut off. There was no threat, no demand. Only truth, and that truth shook the galaxy harder than any weapon could. Within hours, chaos erupted. The Dran Confederacy called an emergency summit. The Tal Dominion ordered fleets to the outer rim. Smaller species began evacuating colonies. Everyone wanted distance from the human warship. Some refused to believe. In a distant system, a fleet commander named Krav sent a defiant message. Human vessel, you are trespassing in sovereign space. Leave now or be destroyed. Arik read the message and smiled faintly. Hellion, mark their location. Coordinates locked. Orders? None, Arik said softly. They'll learn soon enough. Back in the Dran command hall, Admiral Vakar watched as news feeds spread panic. Civilian ships were fleeing the system in thousands. Markets were collapsing. Entire cities were hiding underground. He could not stop the fear. It spread faster than fire. An aide rushed to him, pale and shaking. Sir, the human ship just disabled our orbital satellites. Vakar's eyes widened. Disabled? Not destroyed? Yes, sir. Every system went dark at once. But there was no damage. It's as if they turned them off with a single command. The Admiral felt cold sweat on his skin. They control technology we cannot even understand. Far above the planet, inside the Nemesis, Helion's voice echoed softly. Mission observation. Widespread panic detected. Would you like to engage deterrent demonstration? Arik considered it for a long moment. He could see the fleets outside shimmering like silver insects around his ship. No, he said quietly. Fear is enough. For now. But Helion's sensors detected something else. Deep transmissions between the alien governments. They were trying to form a new alliance. Old enemies were setting aside hatred, uniting again. Not for greed or power, but survival. They are gathering against us, Commander, Helion warned. Arik nodded slowly. That is what they always do. He turned his gaze toward the endless field of stars. Somewhere beyond them lay the forgotten colonies of humankind, the scattered survivors waiting for a sign. Send a message, he said, to all frequencies known to human remnants. Tell them the Nemesis has returned. The galaxy remembers us again. Helion's light pulsed brighter. Message sent. Transmission complete. The words echoed across deep space, reaching old outposts, secret bunkers, and hidden ships buried in asteroid belts. For the first time in centuries, humans scattered across the stars looked up and smiled. One of the crew members approached Arik, voice filled with emotion. Sir, are we really going to fight them? Arik shook his head. Not yet. They will destroy themselves long before we lift a finger. Fear will do the work for us. Outside the viewport, alien ships began retreating one by one. Some fired warning shots into empty space, pretending courage. Others simply fled. The once mighty Dran fleet broke formation, leaving only the flagship behind, trembling alone. Admiral Vakar watched helplessly as his screens showed hundreds of his own ships abandoning him. Cowards, he hissed, but deep down even he understood. The fear that filled the galaxy was not just fear of death. It was the memory of what humanity had once been. A species that refused to surrender, that fought until stars went dark, that vanished only to rise again stronger than before. On the Nemesis, the engines began to hum softly, their glow faint against the void. The ship turned slowly, facing the galactic core, the heart of every empire that once declared humanity extinct. Arik whispered to himself, We are not ghosts. We are history returning. As the ship moved into silent formation, a new dawn broke across Veskar Prime, one painted not by sunlight, but by the reflection of a human warship that should not exist. The galaxy had spent 1,000 years laughing at the myth of humanity. Now it would spend the next 1,000 remembering why that laughter had stopped. The stars above Veskar Prime shone like cold eyes, watching what no one dared to believe. For 3 days, the Nemesis had remained motionless. No shots fired, no words spoken. Only its shadow spreading across the planet like a silent threat. But fear never sleeps. Admiral Vakar's fleet floated in orbit, restless and armed. His officers had stopped eating. Some whispered that the ship's presence was a curse, that their minds were breaking under its quiet stare. When the readings showed that the human vessel's energy core still burned strong, Vakar's patience finally broke. "Prepare the Nova formation," he ordered. "We will remind this ghost that the galaxy has moved on without it." His crew hesitated. "Sir, attacking it may start another war." Vakar's voice cracked like a whip. "Humanity is dead. We rule the stars now. Fire the warning barrage." Thousands of plasma bolts launched across space, forming bright ribbons of light. They struck the Nemesis and vanished. No explosion, no damage, just silence. On the Nemesis bridge, Commander Arik Vale watched the display without emotion. "Status?" he asked. "All systems stable," Helion replied. "Shields absorbed 100% of incoming energy. Zero impact." The commander leaned closer to the viewport. "Then let us show them what that means." Helion's core pulsed with pale blue light. "Authorization required for retaliatory action." "Authorization granted," Arik said. Far below on Vezkar Prime, citizens looked up as the human warship began to glow. Its hull panels shifted open, exposing ancient weapon housings that had not seen light in centuries. One cannon unfolded like a metallic flower, its inner chamber humming softly as if it were breathing the air of war again. The alien scanners went wild. "Unidentified weapon charging," one shouted. "Energy output impossible." "Sir, it's increasing beyond measurable range," Admiral Vekar screamed. "Evasive maneuvers, now!" But it was too late. A beam of pure blue light erupted from the Nemesis. It did not explode, it erased. In an instant, 5 capital ships disappeared, their mass converted to vapor and silence. The beam faded just as quietly as it came. On every monitor, static filled the screens. Vekar stared at the empty space where his ships had been. "What was that?" he whispered. "Weapon yield 0.7%. Helion said calmly on the Nemesis. Arik closed his eyes. That was mercy. Across the galaxy, signals of shock and terror spread. Fleets halted their patrols. Governments demanded answers. The legends of humanity's weaponry had been proven true, and worse, it had evolved. The Nemesis did not move. It simply opened a broad transmission across every channel once more. "We asked for peace. You answered with fire. You will not fire again." The message lasted 4 seconds, yet it was enough. Entire systems went dark, abandoning their fleets. No one dared test the warning. Back inside the alien command hall, Vekar stood trembling. "Their technology defies physics. That weapon draws power from nothing we can detect." A scientist nearby muttered, "Sir, the readings show temporal distortion. It bends time itself." Vekar felt his throat dry. "You mean they can erase moments?" The scientist nodded weakly. "They erased space and time where those ships were. It's not destruction. It's deletion." Meanwhile, on the Nemesis, Arik sat in silence. The bridge lights dimmed around him. He could see his crew's faces, steady but uneasy. "Commander," one officer asked quietly, "how far will we go?" "They know who we are now," Arik replied. "They know our name, but they do not yet know our purpose." He walked to the center of the deck and placed his hand on the control table. "Helion, broadcast an open message to every inhabited world within range." "Message parameters?" Arik spoke slowly, every word like a blade. "Tell them humanity does not seek war. Tell them we remember their mercy at the end of ours. Tell them to choose their next move carefully." Helion transmitted it instantly. Across hundreds of worlds, civilians stopped what they were doing as the holographic image of the human commander filled the skies. His voice echoed through the hearts of billions. "We were forgotten, buried, erased. But you could never erase what we became. We are humanity. We endure, we return." We remember when the broadcast ended, no one moved. No leader spoke. No army advanced. The galaxy froze. Back on Vezkar Prime, Admiral Vekar fell into his chair, whispering to himself, "It's not war they bring. It's judgment." Above the planet, the Nemesis turned slowly, its engines leaving trails of silver light. The scars on its hull glowed faintly like memories of battles long won. Inside, Arik stood alone before the stars. Helion's soft voice broke the silence. "Commander, the remaining fleets are retreating. Shall we pursue?" Arik shook his head. "No, let them run. Fear travels faster than we ever could." The ship began to drift again, calm as a storm waiting to rise. The galaxies beyond were listening now. Every system, every empire, Every being who once mocked humanity's fall now watched the Nemesis in quiet dread. The first strike had not started a war. It had ended one that never truly died. And in the silence that followed, the universe finally remembered why humanity was never meant to be underestimated. The galaxy held its breath. The Nemesis drifted through the void, its black hull reflecting the faint blue shimmer of 1,000 frightened stars. Entire empires had fallen silent since the first strike. Trade networks collapsed, and even pirate fleets stopped their raids. The name humanity had become more powerful than any weapon. Commander Arik Vale stood alone in the observation deck. Beyond the glass, he saw the debris fields left by the vanished ships. He did not look proud. He looked tired. The silence of victory felt heavier than the noise of war. Helian's voice broke the quiet. "Incoming transmission from the Dran Confederacy, Commander. Highest priority." "Open it," Arik said. The hologram of Admiral Vakar appeared, his face pale, his eyes dark with exhaustion. "Human, if that is what you are. We seek peace. You have made your point. Whatever grievance your kind still holds, let us resolve it without more death." Arik studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You do not remember what you did to us, do you?" Vakar swallowed. "Those wars were before my time. Before any of us. It was history. The galaxy moved on." "That is the problem," Arik said quietly. "You moved on. We never could." He turned his back to the hologram. End transmission. The Admiral's image vanished. Helian's core dimmed slightly. "Shall I prepare the next strike?" "No," Arik replied. "Prepare the message." Across the ship, lights shifted from blue to white. The communication arrays unfolded like wings, stretching toward the stars. Helian's voice filled the deck. "Global broadcast protocol initiated. Confirm contents." Arik stepped forward. His voice was calm but heavy with purpose. "To every world, every station, and every being who once swore humanity was gone, listen well. We are not conquerors. We are the children you left for dead. We survived where your mercy failed. We watched your empires rise on the bones of our worlds. Now we stand among the stars again, not as victims, not as gods, but as memory made real. You erased our history. Now we will write yours." The words echoed through space. Across the galaxy, billions stopped moving. Cities froze. From the shimmering towers of the Dran capital to the gas farms of the Tal Dominion, every eye turned upward. Screens flickered, speakers trembled, and for the first time in living memory, the entire galaxy listened to one human voice. On a distant mining colony, an old alien engineer whispered to his crew, "I fought them once. I saw their fire. We never should have forgotten." On a border moon, a young soldier dropped his weapon, staring at the sky as tears filled his eyes. "They were real," he said softly. "The legends were true." In a dark hall on the planet Zyra, the Supreme Council of the Dominion argued in fear. "We must destroy that ship," shouted one general. "If we let it speak, it will unite the others." Another voice answered, trembling, "Unite them against whom? You, me, against all of us?" Meanwhile, inside the Nemesis, Helian's data streams flashed faster. "Commander, incoming responses, thousands. Many offer surrender. Others demand explanation. Some are asking for guidance." Arik turned to his crew. "Guidance? They wish to know what humanity intends for the future." The commander walked to the viewing deck again. The stars looked close enough to touch. "Tell them we do not intend. We endure." Helian paused, processing. Philosophical statement. "Clarify?" Arik smiled faintly. "They will understand." Hours later, the Dran Confederacy's High Council gathered to debate their fate. Some argued to attack. Others begged to submit. The galaxy had never been more divided, and that division was exactly what Arik expected. Fear made empires weak. In the following days, strange events spread. Entire fleets disbanded without orders. Religious groups declared the return of the Starborn, worshipping humanity as ancient gods. Old resistance movements rose, chanting a single phrase, "Remember Earth." From the farthest colonies, signals came, faint but clear, humans answering the call. Ships launched from hidden worlds, each one bearing the same insignia, the old Terran wings. The scattered descendants of humankind were returning home. On the Nemesis, the bridge buzzed with energy as Helion reported. Transmission received from the Rim colonies. They call themselves the New Terran Alliance. Their fleet requests your command. Arik's expression softened. So they heard the message. Yes, Commander. The galaxy has heard you too. Their leaders are terrified. Shall we prepare for open war? Arik closed his eyes. No, war is what they expect. We will give them something worse. Silence. He looked out the window again. The kind of silence that eats at them. The kind that reminds them every night that we are out there watching. Helion's light dimmed. Acknowledged. The Nemesis powered down its main weapons, folding them back into the hull. The ship's glow faded to a quiet blue. From orbit it looked almost peaceful again, like the calm sea after a storm. But in that calm every world trembled. News anchors across systems tried to explain it. Scholars called it the return. Soldiers called it the reckoning. Merchants stopped traveling. Entire planets hid their signatures. The galaxy that once believed itself invincible now lived in the shadow of a single ship and a single truth. Humanity had come back not to destroy, but to remind. For Arik Vale, that was enough. He stood on the bridge watching the stars drift by. They will change, he said softly. They will remember us even if they never see us again. Helion's voice responded quietly. And if they do not? Then the next ship will speak louder. The Nemesis turned away from the capital world, engines igniting with a deep, resonant hum. As it slipped into hyperspace, the stars stretched into lines of light. Below, billions stared into the night sky, knowing that somewhere beyond those streaks of light, humanity still watched. And though no weapon fired, the galaxy understood that the war had already begun. A war of memory. Of fear of truth, humanity's message had been sent, and it would echo through the stars for eternity. Weeks passed, and the galaxy remained trapped in quiet dread. No new wars. No transmissions of defiance. No threats of conquest. Only the memory of the human warship that had arrived from nowhere, spoken a few words, and vanished back into the dark. Across the worlds of the Dran Confederacy, cities moved under dimmed skies. Trade stations hung in still orbit, their lights flickering weakly as if the fear itself drained their power. The name Nemesis had become forbidden to speak aloud. Even, children whispered it in fear before sleeping, imagining the black ship that could erase entire fleets without sound. Admiral Vekar had not slept in days. He stood at the great window of his command center, staring at the empty sky where the ship had once been. He had ordered constant scans. He had ordered fleets to patrol, but every report was the same. No trace. No energy readings. Nothing. Yet somehow every officer swore they could still feel it, like a shadow pressing on their thoughts. He whispered to himself, "They did not destroy us, but they destroyed what we were." And he was right. The galaxy began to change. The Tal Dominion withdrew from all border conflicts. The Zira Union dismantled half its military fleet. Even the ruthless merchant guild started sending anonymous donations to planets they had once exploited. It was as if the presence of humanity's ghost had forced everyone to look in the mirror. But far beyond their trembling empires in the quiet reaches of the Rim, the Nemesis traveled through the dark between stars. Its hull no longer glowed. It had grown silent again, blending into the void. Inside, Commander Arik Vale stood alone in the central observatory. The hum of the engines was slow, deep, almost like breathing. Helion's voice filled the stillness. "Commander, transmissions across major sectors have decreased by 98%. Galactic activity has entered near hibernation state. You have achieved deterrence without sustained conflict." Arik nodded. Fear achieved what peace never could. "Fear is temporary," Helion replied. "In time, they will forget again." Arik looked out the window. The stars stretched like silver threads in the darkness. "Then we will remind them again." He turned from the glass and walked slowly through the ship's corridors. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. He passed the memorial hall, a long chamber where the walls displayed the names of lost human worlds: Earth, Mars, Titan, Sol Colony, New Arcadia, Eden II. Each one shimmered faintly in blue light. He stopped before the name Earth. The letters were cracked and worn, but still there, still shining. "Do you think they will ever understand what we lost?" he asked quietly. Helion's voice softened. Understanding is not their nature, but remembering is yours. Arik smiled faintly. Then we have done our duty. Elsewhere in the ship, the crew gathered in small groups. Some were engineers who had been born in hidden colonies, others soldiers whose grandparents told stories of Earth as myth. They spoke quietly, wondering if their mission was truly over. A young officer, Mara Kane, approached Arik on the bridge. "Commander," she said softly, "we keep receiving weak signals from other human colonies. They're rallying. They say they want to build again, to form something new." Arik looked at her. "And what do they call it?" She smiled slightly. "The New Terran Alliance. They want to rebuild what was lost, not in anger, but in unity." Arik looked toward the stars, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then it begins again." Helion spoke. "Commander, incoming message from the outer colonies. They request a reply." Arik's eyes were calm, but there was something human in them, the spark of hope buried beneath centuries of survival. "Tell them the Nemesis will guide them home." "Acknowledged," Helion said, and the message went out into the dark, a pulse of light racing faster than sound, carrying humanity's promise to the farthest edges of the galaxy. In the months that followed, the legends grew. Some said the humans had ascended beyond flesh and time. Others said the Nemesis was not a ship, but a living being. The soul of humanity itself returned to judge the living. On 1,000 worlds, statues were built of faceless figures holding stars in their palms. Temples rose and priests whispered the same words. "Remember the humans." But the humans themselves did not stay to rule or to punish. They stayed hidden, rebuilding quietly in the shadows of forgotten worlds. Every passing year, their colonies grew stronger, smarter, and quieter. The galaxy's fear turned into myth, the myth turned into history, and history turned into warning. Back aboard the Nemesis, the stars outside shifted as the ship entered another system, a lonely sun surrounded by dust. Arik stood once more at the command deck, his reflection faint in the glass. Helion spoke softly. "You could reveal yourselves now. You could lead openly. Why continue the silence?" Arik's gaze stayed on the stars. "Because silence is louder than war. Let them think we are myth. Let them tremble at the thought. That is how peace survives." Helion paused. "Do you believe peace can last?" Arik smiled faintly. "No, but memory can." He turned and gave a final order. "Record this entry. Classification, eternal." "Recording," Helion said. Arik began to speak slowly, his voice steady. "This is Commander Arik Vale of the Terran battleship Nemesis. We have returned to the stars that once burned our home. We came not for revenge, but for remembrance. Let the galaxy know. Humanity endures. Wherever there is silence, we are listening. Wherever there is darkness, we are watching. And when the stars forget us again, we will remind them." The recording ended. Helion's core pulsed once in acknowledgement. Outside, the ship turned, toward the endless dark, its engines glowing faintly. Not bright, not loud, just enough to remind the stars that something ancient still moved among them. In the cold quiet of deep space, a final whisper traveled through the void, faint but eternal. "Never forget the humans." And then, once more, the galaxy fell silent.